Welcome to the Dog Trainers Podcast,
a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
Hey everybody, welcome back and thank you so much for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast. Mariano Alvarez here with Brent LaBrada, and a very special guest we'll be announcing in just a second. But first, we do want to remind you guys again, this is Season 2, Episode 2. We're excited for the new season. This is our first interview being back, and we can't thank you guys enough for your support. You're the best listeners in the world, and we thank you. And with that, over to you, man.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. This is Brent. Again, Episode 2, Season 2. Super excited for our next guest. He is the founder of Say It Once Dog Training. He officially, as of 2 minutes ago, has the sexiest hair on TikTok. His name is Mr. Vinnie Somma. How are you, buddy?
Good, my man. Thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you guys for taking the time to do everything that you guys do. And I can't tell you guys enough how much young trainers should appreciate everything you guys do, because I wish I had this 10 years ago. It would fucking help out a boatload.
Man,
thank you, man.
Very sweet of you. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Well, we spend a lot of time stalking people on the internet, or doing research, as we call it, right?
Stalking people.
So as we do research, cool thing is, we had the privilege of interviewing a lot of dog trainers on here, and, we straight up asked them, we go, so who else should we interview? Who do you guys like? And you want to know how many people, a lot of people said, check out Say It Once, check out Say It Once. And I was like, all right, so we're going to check out Say It Once. And, man, just getting to see you, you feel like you get to know someone on social media, right? And on top of that, I was looking through your content, I was looking at the Instagrams, I was looking at the TikTok. And the funny thing is, I didn't even pay attention to how many followers you had. But fuck, man, you have such an amazing following. And I know I'm sure you have your own little recipe to why that is. And I have a feeling it has a lot to do with the way you treat your community around you. And I want to talk a little bit about that later on. But I guess let's go ahead and just jump into this podcast the same way we work with every special guest that we have on. Let's start in the beginning. Who was Vinnie before he was a dog trainer, and how did he turn into a dog trainer?
Yeah, man. So I was 19. I moved out to Chicago. I was a pretty good hockey player, so I thought that was it. My brother went to D1, got a scholarship, went out, played pro. And my brother's one of the biggest idols in my life. He's 5 years older. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to follow his footsteps. Mm-hmm. And I was on my path. And at 19 years old, moved out to Chicago. I got fucked up. I got a really bad concussion. And like an idiot, you guys are good. You know how it is. Went back way too soon.
Right.
Just was being stupid. Yeah, I'm fine. I can do this. And then I got hurt again.
Yeah.
And I had to move back home with my parents. That was the end of hockey and life as I knew it. So I was 19 years old, living back at home with my mom and dad, my grandma, and our dog, our Newfoundland Gunner. And no idea what I'm going to do with my life, right? And 6 months go by, I'm still not getting better. 9 months go by, still not getting better, except now I'm 75 pounds heavier. I'm severely depressed. I'm anxious. I'm just a mess, basically. You know what I mean? And I was in a bad state. And my brother was talking about getting a puppy. And you guys ever know when someone says something and it sounds like such a good idea and you can't get it out of your brain, right? That's all you fucking think about all day long. And I couldn't get it out. I'm like, man, you know what? I really want a puppy. So I called my uncle. My uncle Andy trained dogs in the 80s and 90s, the old Keeler method. I called him and he was like, okay, well, before you get a puppy, you can't just get a puppy, Vinny. Before you get a puppy, let's read, let's talk, let's go through it. So, he lives in Columbus, Ohio, and I live in Pittsburgh. So I would literally call him for 2-3 hours, and bless his heart, fucking greatest guy on this planet, would listen to me, talk to me, walk me through it. And then I got my first dog, my English Mastiff Trigger, who, honest to God, how sometimes we say, hey, he saved my life and so on and so forth.
Right.
If I wouldn't have got that dog, just based off the path that I was on, because for concussion, they didn't do as much 10 years ago as they did now. So I thought that I was not going to be alive if I would have kept fucking, going down this path. So I get this dog who fucking makes you, hey, I want to go outside. Cool, let's go for a walk. They force you, hey, I'm bawling my fucking eyes out on the ground. Hey, he comes up over to you. And you get this dog who literally changes the way that you look at life. He gives you something to love again. He gives you a purpose. And I'm like, it was the coolest thing in the world for me to wake up and train this little 9-week-old English Mastiff puppy, you know what I mean? Just cruising around on the floor. And I'd call my uncle, like, he ate out of Gunner's dog dish. What do I do? You know what I mean? And I'm just calling him all the time. So that's how I got started. Was I got this puppy, and I had an awesome mentor, my uncle, who trained dogs. And he was the first one to show me the world of dog training. And then he came in when Trigger was 9 weeks old, because I was crying about him eating out of another dog's dog dish, and didn't really understand anything about dog training or being a productive dog owner. And he came into town, and like, I was blown away with what he could teach a 9-week-old puppy. I didn't realize that this was even possible, you know. And you watch it in front of you, and I still remember it to this day. But you watch this shit in front of you, and you're like, this is magic. Like, this guy is a wizard, you know. And it was just basic shit, right? But basic shit to somebody who doesn't know anything, is incredible,
mind blowing. Yeah,
it really is, right? And sometimes, like, I still get chills thinking about, like, when I go to a client's house and I show them something and they're like weeping. I can't believe my dog can do this. And you're like, dude, that's why you do this job, right? That brings me back to that experience with my uncle. And he was my first mentor. He taught me everything I knew at the time. Well, he taught me, and then the OG of dog training, who everybody our age watched on TV, Caesar. You know what I mean? Yeah. See, and that's, you know, the thing about Caesar, because people love to hate on Caesar, right? I absolutely love and respect the guy for everything that he did for dog training. And, you know, but you watch him on TV, you read his books, and it's just like, it made dog training so cool, you know, and like, I wanted to train a dog. And that's how I started. So I started training my own dog, Trigger. And, we have our dog. I still have it actually in my house, our little dog training notebook from when he was 9 weeks old, 10
that's
weeks
awesome.
old, so on and so forth. And you know, we wrote down all the tricks and shit that we would teach. And I forget, we're like at 80, we were at 80 something. I mean, this guy knew how to take my socks off, how to put laundry away, how to turn off light switches. Because that's all I did. I was 20 years old, a kid with nothing else to do. And so he turned a year old, and a year old in 3 days, we went and got his Therapy Dogs International test.
Nice.
And we passed, right? And the trainer there gave me, you know, amazing compliments. And I was like, dude, this is, you know, it was pretty cool. I was so proud of him, and I was proud of us together as a team. And from there, my parents had a restaurant, and one of their patrons said, "Hey, Vinny, or hey, Susan, my dog's having a problem, and I see your son post all these videos," because I was just shooting shit on like an iPhone, posting them up on Facebook, and like, can you help? And I know he can help me. And at the time, I'm like, I don't know. I can train my dog. I don't know what I'm doing, but sure, I'll come over. Why not? Right?
Nice.
So she had a golden retriever, Sydney, who wouldn't walk down the street, right? Did the old freeze up method, as we see 1,000 times before. And so I went out there with, you know, when we're talking about Caesar and Keeler method, the only things I have in my pouch are a choke chain and a slip lead. Right? These are the only two things I had. And so I went out with a slip lead, and we did a little pressure release, and within like 3-4 minutes, got the dog walking down the street. And within 15 minutes, we had the human doing some, you know, a little bit of nothing like what it looks like now, but a little bit of figure eights and a little bit of heel walking. And I went back to her house next week, and she said, "Hey, I'm going to start a dog training business for you. I'm going to set you up with business cards."
Whoa.
And dude, she was one of my guardian angels. And like, I swear to God, I still have chills thinking about Laura to this day. Like, the amount of shit, like, in order for anybody to be successful in life, someone has to help them. Right. And it's, you know,
true.
And first was my uncle, and then was Laura. And I was like, for someone to go out on a limb like that, like, she would just help me so much. And, you know, I'm 29. So this was when I was 21 years old. So this is 9 years ago. And I don't know. So that's how I got started. Was I learned a lot from my uncle. I learned a lot from the School of Hard Knocks. I made 1,000 mistakes, you know, and I'm not ashamed to do it. I've been doing this fucking long enough to realize, my first few years of dog training are completely different than this year, which is completely different from last year, which will be different from next year.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know what, man? That's not only is that's very enlightening, and that's cool. And thank you for sharing that story. But now it makes a lot of sense as to why you're as involved with the community and helping other people as you are.
Yeah. Thank you, man. That's something I take a lot of pride in. You know, I don't really look at my customers as customers. They're our family, and I say it all the time, but it's not a cheesy pickup line. It's not like we need more customers for me to go, you know, you're our family. But yeah, that's the way I look at the Say It Once. It could be, you're part of our Say It Once family, and I want to make it as comforting for everybody as possible. And so yeah, I mean, a lot of that comes back from especially Andy.
Here's a question that I've been asking people lately. So your uncle was your mentor in terms of the first person to really help you train your dog Trigger, right? And then this was a client named Laura that ended up loving what you did and helped you start the business and business cards, and she was just like a great supporter. Who would you say, and it doesn't have to be someone you know personally, like for me, it was just people that you look up to, like autobiographies and stuff. Who would you say are some of your bigger mentors or people that inspire you who aren't necessarily dog trainers, just in life in general? Like, are there hockey players? I mean, other than your big brother, just trying to get a better feel for how you see things.
Yeah, dude. Man, I'm going to try to pick something that's not cheesy, but my fucking mom and dad are the greatest people on the planet. Okay. Most dog trainers, like, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't go to college, and, I was a pretty smart kid in high school, and my dad, dude, yeah, I'm really lucky. I have really, really good parents. And my dad, when I was just like, this was going on with Laura, right at this time frame, I remember my mom asking, like, hey, are you going to go to college? What's the plan? And I didn't want to go, right? Because now I had the seed in my head. It's a fucking sickness, right? You're like, dude, I want to do this for a living. Yeah. And I remember this story so vividly. I met with my dad at the top of the basement steps, and I'm like, Dad, here's the thing. I do not want to go to college, and I want to train dogs for a living. And dude, I'm going to fucking tear up. He looks at me and he goes, then go do it and have fun. And, you have somebody like that who, it's fucking hard, dude. It's hard to start a business from absolutely nothing. And, just say, hey, my 20-year-old son who could have been really good at hockey is going to now start a dog training business. Yeah. But I respect the hell out of my parents for that, for letting me choose my own fate. And thank God they did.
Yeah. Yeah. You were blessed with good parents, man. That's
very much so.
Lucky. That's very good. That's very important. Now a question for your uncle. Was he a professional dog trainer or just kind of like a hobbyist?
More of a hobbyist. Yeah. So, I mean, he did it on the side for a long time, but it wasn't his main gig. Although I don't know how many professional dog trainers had only one gig back in the day. It'd be something I'd be curious. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know how much money they could have made.
Yeah, like when we were kids, like people were like, if you were going in the dog industry, you were like a vet or a vet tech, or worked at a zoo if you were in the animal industry,
Yeah, like teaching people after work.
Yeah, no one thought that dog training could be a career that pays for your house or your car or, other things like that. But we'll get into that a little bit later.
Here's another logistical question for you. So we were talking then about Laura, which was about 2011, 2012, based on age, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, smartphones were a thing, but not really. And social media was barely kind of budding. I don't think Instagram was around and Facebook was kind of new. So were you posting knowing that social media was going to keep growing, or were you just kind of putting stuff out there to put stuff out there? I'm thinking in terms of, even now with social media being what it is, we've got so many listeners, all over the world who they don't quite understand just how important it is to make sure that you're putting yourself out there, that people know that you're here.
Yeah. So it was just because that's honest to God, that was the most fun I've ever had at that time, was just training my dog. And I just shared it, right? I was just like, okay, well, I love this. I'm putting this up here. Hopefully other people love this. And, there's a lot of old videos. I don't take any of my old stuff down, even the old training videos that I'm like, oh, Vinny, why would you say that? Because why would I? You know what I mean? So it's all still up. It's all still up on my personal and/or.
Well, you get to see the growth. That's the cool part. Yeah,
well, it's part of the journey. Well, that's the beautiful thing. Like Brent and I, we've laughed about this probably a few times. And somebody was kind enough to lie to my face, and they were like, yeah, I just listened to the podcast. I listened to the first episode and it was great. And I was like, no, it wasn't, but thank you. But yeah, I was like, the first episode is like 6 minutes long and it's not good, but I appreciate what you're trying to do. Right. So, but I would never take that down either, just because it's part of the journey. And frankly, like for listeners and for people, because I'm sure you watch, and have watched other dog trainers online and stuff like that, so it's fun to be able to grow alongside them.
Right? So
absolutely, it's important not to take that stuff down,
dude. 100%. And that last line that you just said is really important, to grow alongside them. because this is one of the most toxic industries on the planet. At least, you know, we're on the inside of it. So my vision's like this, right? But I'm like, dude, this industry, there are so many dogs out there that you don't got to worry about somebody else. I'm going to tell you that right now, because your only competition is yourself, right? You should be uplifting other trainers. We should be helping other people. So there's a dog trainer here in Pittsburgh, Paul Anthony, a great guy, old canine guy, canine officer, just an awesome guy. And he invited me out to his place 2-3 years ago. And, you know, another balance trainer in the area. And I'm like, skeptical, right? You're like, he's going to try to steal something. Let me go. Just the most honest, upfront, just the nicest guy of all time. Like, oh shit. Like, this is how I guess it should, but it makes sense. That's how it should be. What's he care about another dog trainer? It's the less dogs he's got to worry about.
True.
Well, you know, something that we were talking about with Michael Ellis that I found very interesting was it's kind of this new world now where, like, the younger dog trainers understand the importance of social media and mixing it up and talking, whereas the older dog trainers kind of have this, like, old school carpentry, you don't give out your secrets type thing.
Dude,
but,
yeah.
You know, and what I found really fascinating, and I wanted to get Michael Ellis's perspective because he's got, like, an Instagram and stuff too, but their thing was like Learberg and his working dogs and his school. So it's just a different perspective from like Brent and I, right? And I was just trying to ask him, like, you know, without this feeling like a pointed question, because you can answer in any which way you want. Do you find that there are obvious upsides to social media. Do you find that there are any downsides? And you can say no.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be downsides. I think that one of the biggest downsides is how, if you can't take criticism well, social media is a motherfucker. And that's something I like, you know, you gotta grow some thick, you gotta grow some thick skin pretty quick. And that really hurt. So I've been training dogs for a long time, and we've always had a really successful business. Like, especially the past 3 years, we've been really, really successful in Pittsburgh. And then I blew up on TikTok on like last year. One of my clients was like, "Hey, why aren't you on TikTok? You're an idiot." So I'm like, "All right, I'll go on here." Right. And the only other guy on there was John Gata. Right. That was it. It was Gata, who already had a fucking verified check mark. I'm like, how does this guy have a verified check mark? And what's going on here? So I just started putting out like okay, well, here's some of my information. Right. And people ate it up. And then I got big, and then people decided not to eat it up. Right. Because now there's a lot of people going, I fucking hate this guy. And you get nasty messages, you get nasty videos, you get nasty shit. Then you go to sleep at night and you're like, man, this is just toxic. And dude, I shit you not. This is a couple of months back, probably January this year. I'm like, I was like eating like an idiot again, getting stressed out. I feel anxious again, back to the same trend just because negative comments.
Yeah.
So I got to tell you, man, this is something that I say to a lot of our guests who have like big followings too. We talked about this with Tyler Muto, Tommy Davis, Michael, like, you name it, right? all the bigger names, right? Sean O'Shea. I'm never surprised that people talk their shit on social media, because that's like almost like what it's for, it seems like. But I'm always surprised that it works. I'm always surprised that guys, but I guess you get tired of it after a while. Like, I hear you.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, and it's just, it's hard, because then especially as the account started to grow, then you feel that I felt just pressure, this annoying. And then I just started blocking accounts that I didn't want to see anymore. Because I would like actually go on here to see, what'd you say about me? It's like, dude, that's such an unhealthy.
And you have your guard up. Yeah. You got your
guard up. I'm like, Vinny, why do you care?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In 10 years, you're going to look back and go, what did that person have any effect on your life? Just block them, move on. It ain't that big of a deal. You are true to yourself. And that's the thing is, and I had to ask myself, is there anything I'm doing wrong? No. Do I believe everything in myself and what I'm doing? Yes. Then shut the fuck up and move forward.
Yeah. Cause it's a little gaslighting, it's a little gaslighting, and that can sometimes lead to feeling like an imposter. Right. And like feeling this imposter syndrome in dog training is super real. Right. Because there's so much information out there. It's so interesting, unless you've actually sat down and like learned to form right? Like I started in Keeler too. That's why his book's way back there. And I started in Keeler and worked my way out of Keeler over the years. And it's interesting because, when you hear a good point from one side or you hear someone bashing what you're doing, it can definitely confuse the shit out of you for a brief moment until you start looking at things analytically, like, well, no, I was affected. This is working. And as much as someone might say this is wrong, but you're like, but there's value coming out of what I'm doing. Right. So it can't be wrong. Right. So that's an interesting thing.
And you're getting 10 to 100 to 1 messages of, dude, you've helped me with this. You've helped me with this.
Right.
And you almost because you get them, you kind of like, just like, I know. Cause you focus just on that one negative. Right. Yeah. But that affects your entire day. So of all the positives that social media has, and dude, there are so many. And I'm a huge marketing guy in a sense of I love marketing and I love marketing and social media. We can talk about that at any point. But I think the biggest downside would be just getting stuck in a negative rut and, or you spend too much time on it. That was a fucking kiss of death too, right? You could spend 6 hours on TikTok like an ass.
Well, I'll be very frank. Like, we were looking at reviews on the podcast the other day and we were just like, okay, iTunes 5 star, or no, not iTunes, Spotify 5 stars. This one, okay, good, we're doing great. And then I remember seeing like 2 1 stars on iTunes and being like, oh, I gotta read these comments, but they weren't comments, they were just star clicks. Just someone just be like, fuck them. You know what I mean? And I remember being like, oh, because this is the only platform that we've actually done consistently, right? Like,
yeah. 100%, dude. And it's your fucking baby, right? So you take everything personal because I've grown this thing from a seed, right? From a seed of nothingness. Yeah. And now you're here. And, so when someone tries to take you down, the last thing you ever want to do is like, listen, I've been down there. Yeah. I'm only going up from here. And, it's hard. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That's something that I wish more people understood, because what you're saying there, at least in my head, has a segue for some potential interesting conversation that could have some advice in it for newer trainers, because I couldn't agree with you more. Something like this, it is your baby. We take a lot of time out of our day to do this. It's not free to do this. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you're tired. Sometimes whatever. But we do it because we want to make good content, because we know people like it, and people tell us that, like, just like you, right? We get lots of support and everything else. We've had some phone calls with some listeners who have reached out to us, over whoever else, because they're having issues with their dogs and they wanted our advice, right? And we talk to them, and they'll shoot us a text a couple days later, like, bro, that totally helped. You were right, But what I find, if you think of things that way, what I find helpful in that is, if you look at it as your baby, or as you, however you want to see it, but intrinsically attached to you, something that I've never found so true is, as you grow as an individual, your business grows with you. Like, the better you get, the bigger it gets. And it's like it goes hand in hand. And like you were saying, when you fall into these ruts, which happens because we're human, the business suffers, even if it's something as little as like, oh shit, I forgot to text what's their name back, and and stuff like that. But it's something, right? So I've always found that very interesting, as like, from a business owner's perspective, because to me this is new. Nobody in my family, I have one person in my extended family who's gone to college. Everybody else, and I'm the first, I think I'm the only business owner in the family, like, at any capacity. So I have major imposter syndrome, like, all the time, especially these days when we've been busy enough that I'm hiring on employees and interns and assistants and stuff like that. So I have to check myself often. And honestly, as much as we joke about it on the podcast, the reason why I do stuff like jujitsu and boxing and working out and everything else is, it's honestly just to give me something to do, because I'm a very, like, busy person. But also it keeps me, I don't want this to sound wrong, it keeps me, like, proud of myself, because I can do these things well. Yeah. So it's like, if I can win at this, then I can win at that too.
Yeah, you feel competent at life. Like, doing things outside of your normal daily routine. You're just like, I'm multidimensional.
It adds something to you, and it gives you something to hold on to when stuff's not going well. If it's for me, I take pride in this kind of thing. You know, wow, today was like super hot. Like it's hot enough out here that even if you're not outside, it's not like I'm working dogs in the blazing heat. But even if it's like the way that I get away with working dogs out here is once they're good enough to the point that I can't really work them here at the house anymore. In the early mornings, we go to the park while we can, and then when it gets too hot, we take them to stores. And I'm luckily enough that all kinds of places around here are super dog friendly, and they totally understand with the heat. Like you're welcome right on in. So we'll go to different stores and restaurants and things like that, certain malls and outdoor malls and stuff with like misters and fans. But it's so hot out here that just the travel, just getting in the car, waiting for it to cool off, that will drain you. You know what I mean? And so I take a lot of pride in being able to be like, look, it was a long ass day, but I had the energy to, you know, like my body was able to carry me through jujitsu and then through boxing and then through my clients and then through text messages and all this stuff. And then the podcast this evening, then I get to bed, you know. And it's just, it's something that makes me feel like, okay, well, if I can do that, then I'm fine tomorrow. Whatever comes at me, like I'm good.
Yep. I totally agree. It helps keeps you focused in a way.